mishap. Obviously, everybody's heard about it, right? It happened on September 3rd. So what I did is I drew a timeline of this particular accident. I know I'll speak everything for those that can't see all the writing per se, what's up here. But what you're going to gather from this whole thing is it's aviate, navigate, communicate. Some people just say aviate, 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 you know, and that's a true statement too. So let me set up the scenario for those who don't know all the detail. Now, what I did is I gathered, most people are familiar with FlightAware. You can put in the tail number of any airplane, and if they're on an IFR flight plan or they're doing flight following, they're going to show up on FlightAware. And it gives you timestamps every minute of where the airplane is, lat longs, how fast it's going, how high it is, what its vertical velocity is, whether it be up or down, and every minute from start all the way to destination. So what I did is I put in his tail number and got his basically ground track. He was leaving McGee Tyson, going to someplace, I think, in Mississippi. He was talking to Atlanta Center. At the time, he was on an IFR flight plan. He had just leveled off at 16,000 feet. What I found out yesterday, and Jason was supposed to be here. He's the ATC, or Air Traffic Controller. Not Jason. Help me out. Justin, yeah, was going to be here and share a little insight from ATC standpoint. And he might show up and he might not. But anyway, the Lancair had just leveled off at 16,000 feet. Well, guess when did most engine problems occur? During throttle transients, okay? Which, guess what, is takeoff and landing, and here he is, he had just leveled off, it's a turbocharged engine, and guess what he's doing? He's tweaking and fiddling, obviously, with the engine. And that's why I'm a very big proponent of not touching the engine, especially in a complex airplane, you know, until you get at least gliding distance. It happens to be in the Bonanza and the Aero, 1,500 feet is your 180-degree turn back option. Obviously, I advocate that nobody does a turn back in a 172 or 152, 180-degree turn back, unless you have 1,000 feet. But in the Bonanza and the Aero, it's 1,500 feet. So I'm a big proponent of not touching, obviously, anything. If it's running, leave it running, you know. Obviously, when you get to cruise, you're going to tweak the engine. But now you're at cruise, and altitude is insurance, so you should have options. And you do have options. So anyway, he had just leveled off. And if you go to the timestamps and watch, he was in cruise for about a minute. Now, this is from Justin. The handoff from Atlanta Center to Chattanooga was in the communication between ATC to ATC was that he was having some, apparently some kind of avionics difficulty. Evidently, it was not relayed that he was having engine troubles. So when he comes over the frequency to Chattanooga, and you can listen to all of this on liveatc.net, you go to September 3rd and start at 1912, 1912, which is 3:12 in the afternoon. There's a pull down. You go to liveatc.net. You select Chattanooga. It'll give you a pull down of the times for that particular time, and it's 30-minute increments, and you go to select 1900 to 1930. And then you scroll over to 1912 and push play, and you can listen to the ATC comm between him and ATC. And it is very, very distinct. I mean, not distinct. You can barely hear it. The guy says emergency one time. That's it. And so I'm fairly convinced, based on listening to what happened and being obviously 40 years of doing this, that the air traffic controller had no idea that he was, no kidding, a serious emergency engine out. So he comes over and he goes, hey, I need vectors to Chattanooga. Now, let me tell you what the weather was. Bill and I had just landed. We had the Bonanza and the Super Decathlon out. We had gone down to Lafayette to pick it up. We left Lafayette. It was a huge thunderstorm just to the north, so we had to take off to the south, go to the east, and we did flight following. We were flying in formation, coming up from Collegedale, circling, and then coming over this way. It was about 3,200 feet, and it was in between scattered to broken. It definitely was not a broken ceiling, but it was fairly, there was a fair amount of cloud base around. So he's on an instrument flight plan, but he's VMC up top. It's clear above. You know, this stuff is only a couple thousand feet thick. And it's clear at 1 million below. The visibility was phenomenal. Unlike just normal summer hazy days. So anyway, so we come back and we had just left the frequency when this occurred. We landed about 5 minutes after 3. But anyway, so the weather's good. Should not have been, not really an issue. But here he is, VMC up top at 16,000. He's looking down, he just sees clouds. You know. Now there's breaks in the clouds, but he sees clouds. And so he comes over the frequency and goes that he needs vectors to runway 33 or 20. Yeah, 33 or 20. And so let me back that up just a minute and then we'll get to that point. So at 310, he's at 16,000 feet. He's at 230 knots. And he just started descending. He's got a 1,200 foot per minute rated descent. He is 6 nautical miles from 2 Alpha 0. Okay? At 311, he's a minute later, he's at 13,500 feet. He's doing 206 knots. He's at 3,300 feet per minute rated descent. And he's 3 nautical miles from 2 Alpha 0. This is to scale. This is exactly what, I took this off the sectional while that's what I was doing last night. So at 310, at 16,000 feet, the Lancair, now I pulled this off the internet, and I had 2 sources that told me that best glide speed was 120 knots. And before I knew any of this, I've never flown one, but I go, you know what, I'll bet it's about the same glide ratio as the Bonanza. And which is basically 1.5 nautical miles to every 1,000 feet of altitude. And the best glide speed on that is roughly 120 knots. And so before I did the research, I was guessing that Lancair was about the same. And sure enough, it's 1.4 nautical, it's 7.7 to 1. So 7.7 feet for every 1 foot of altitude it'll go. So it's basically 1.4 nautical miles for every 1,000 feet of altitude. So it's 16,000 feet. All right, now he hasn't talked to Chattanooga yet. He's talking to Atlanta Center. He's 6 nautical miles from 2 Alpha 0, and his range is 22 nautical miles. Well, there's Chattanooga. He's 30 miles from Chattanooga. He's not going to make it anyway. It's a non-event. You know, Chattanooga should have never been in his process or in his thought process. But guess what? He sees some clouds and he goes, holy crap, you know, I'm going to need, you know, help getting down. Now, he's going to need help, or he thinks he needs help getting down because he's got oil all over his windscreen as well. We're going to talk about that in a minute. He's still talking Atlanta Center. Now he is three miles from Dallas, or from 2 Alpha Zero, and he's descending at 3,300 feet a minute. How's Aviate going for him?
Good.
Yeah, dude, there's some panic there. Now, if you go to Live ATC and listen to him talk, he sounds pretty good. You know, it's his last little. He has a last little sigh right before he knows that it's inevitable. Now, not inevitable that he's going to die, but things aren't going well. But up until that point, he sounds. You know, Tony Randall is sitting back here as a retired Southwest pilot who used to keep his airplane over here, and former military. It's important to sound cool on the radio, you know, even if you are scared crapless, you know. So he's maintaining his composure, you know. I mean, he sounds really good on, and you can bet, obviously, we'd all be scared, you know, in that situation. The engine, you know, craps the bed, you got oil all over the windscreen. And we'll hear that part of that story here in a little bit from Jason. So anyway, the bottom line is Aviate. Dude, he just, hey, what's the first thing you do? Oh my gosh, engine failure. Best glide speed. Trim, 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 trim. Don't lose any altitude, go to best glide speed. So he should have immediately gone to 120 knots. Would that have changed whether he's going to make Chattanooga? No, he's not going to make Chattanooga. So that's out. So here it comes, he cruises, he's cruising basically almost due south, and here his next spot is at 312. This is, if you go to the timestamp and you listen to Live ATC, this is the first time he calls. That's when he barely can hear emergency, and then he goes, hey, I need vectors, you know, to run, I think he says initially to the crosswind runway. And runway 33 going. Is where he's thinking. Anyway, at that time, he's at 9,300 feet. He's doing 169, so he's starting to slow down. But he's got a 3,200 foot per minute rate of descent still. Now, at 120 knots, in that airplane, your VVI is going to be around 1,500 feet a minute. So he's descending at twice the descent rate that the airplane is capable, obviously, of doing in the best flight. So his first call to Chattanooga is at 312. He goes, hey, here I am, I need vectors, blah, blah, blah. Now, if Chattanooga, again, gotten the handoff from Atlanta Center, and the pilot would have been more descriptive. I mean, I just can't. I've had 2 engine failures in my life. Both of them were in the pattern. I was 19 years old in a Piper Arrow and lost the engine on downwind, pulled the power back to slow down and put the gear down, went to push the power up, and it was gone, and just dead sticked it. So there was no time to panic. It was like that, and of course, everybody who's learned how to fly here knows that I teach adamantly that from being the touchdown point, from that point on, it's you fly an approach to always be in a position to land if the engine doesn't continue to run for you. So it was a non-event. And then I had a T-34 for a number of years with a couple of partners, and I ran the T-34 out of gas. Now, it did have gas, okay, but it just wasn't in the tank that I was on. So, anyway, so it stopped running. So I was coming back. Guess what I didn't do? The descent checklist. You know, gas on the fullest tank. So anyway, me and my partner Larry Day were coming back from up north or northwest, doing an en route descent coming across the plateau here. The T-34 had a really slow gear extension speed, so I got the power back, trying to get the stupid thing slowed down. I finally get it below gear speed, drop the gear, and go to push the power up. And go to push the power up, and it goes. And so you know, that's not a place to troubleshoot. I'm in a position to land, so I just dead stick. I had an idea of what was wrong, but I wasn't about to troubleshoot then. I'd been really pissed about it, put it in the field, and all it was that stupid mistake of not going to the right tank. And I had enough energy. We used to keep the airplane, before these new hangars were built, it was that old first T hangar. I was able to taxi clear of the runway and then switch tanks and start it back up and taxi park. But anyway, so I have never, I've had 2 engine failures, but they've always been in a position, I didn't have to make any decisions. All the decisions were made for me based on where I was. So where I'm going with that is, you know, here he is at 16,000 feet of cruise and engine failure. You know, I think that I would be on the radio, Mayday, 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 you know, Cessna 123, engine failure. Snap vector to nearest airport, okay? Snap vector to nearest airport. If you don't have this situational awareness, and we can talk about how to run a GPS, I advocate, you know, again with the people that I teach, that you run your GPS in either 15 or 30 mile scope. In the Bonanza and the Arrow, basically about the same glide ratio if you're at 10,000 feet. And I'm just using that as an example. You've got about 15 nautical miles if you run in 15 nautical mile scope. Anything that shows up on the GPS, you have a chance of making. It's not guaranteed, but you have a chance of making. If you run in 30 mile scope, obviously anything that's halfway in between, you got it that shows up as an airfield, you got a potential place to land. So he knew where Chattanooga was, and again, and as soon as you start scanning out on a GPS and going to, you know, larger ranges, it has to start decluttering, and so it starts taking away, you know, airfields that would normally be shown up on 15 or 30 mile scope. So I'm a very big proponent of always staying in 15 or 30 mile scope on at least the 2 airplanes that I fly fairly regularly that have GPS. But, you know, even if he, so the aviate, navigate, you know, what do we teach here? You know, okay, aviate, navigate, communicate. So, you know, okay, engine failure, best glide speed, navigate, pick out a field. You look, going there, you know, and you turn the airplane in that direction. And then we go, okay, what now what? And go, oh, communicate. Okay, 121.5, 7,700, mayday, 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 Cessna 123 is going down, engine failure, you know, and then come back, well, you know, say number of souls aboard and nature of emergency and blah, 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 and how much fuel do you have? Well, I got 2 hours of gas. And they go, is there anything we can do for you? And you go, yeah, bring us a #1 supersize when we land. And that's about all, I mean, that's all you're going to get out of them if you're going to go down into the field. But, so if you haven't taken, if you don't know situational awareness where you are, then out of your mouth should be, you know, mayday, 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 snap vector to nearest airport. And they're going to take you right to where, hey, turn right 270, you got an airport 3 miles from you, you know. And so what would this guy had to do? You know, at 16,000 feet, or basically, the closest he got was right here. He was 3 nautical miles at 13.5. Start a descent. 120 knots. Just keep descending. You know, and who cares where you break out? If you're circling over top of the field, okay, and you know you break out a beam, you know, and you're at 3,200 feet or 2,000 feet above the ground, and you go, hey. Okay, I'm going to make this a downwind and come in and land here. Or, you know, you break out, you know, 2 miles on the extended center line, you go, you're at you know, 2,500 feet, you go, dude, I can't do a, you know, go all the way around and make a base, so, okay, I'll do a 270 and come in and land this way, or, you know, I'll S-turn to lose altitude or whatever, obviously, to get the airplane down. But the bottom line is, you know, with the altitude that he had, or the the ceiling that he had, it should have been a non-event. And it, you know, it's hard to, you know, it's easy to Monday morning quarterback. You know, there's no doubt about that, and that's why I, you know, said, you know, let me speak through him on what he did, so we don't make the same mistakes ourselves if the unlikely event that it ever happens to us. But you know, he that's all he had to do, and he'd have been home to see his 4 kids and his wife that day. It just wouldn't have been a non-event. Anyway, so let's see, timestamp 3:14, he's at 5,000 feet, 185 knots, and descending. He's getting close. He's 1,600 foot a minute rate of descent. Cleveland was a potential here, and I don't remember what the mileage was, but it was, I think it was 12 miles, and he could have made it barely. Obviously, he said the best option was still to turn around, but he could have made Cleveland. He definitely could have made the old Cleveland airport, even here. And you know, if he scaled right, he sees those airports, you know, on his GPS. So anyway, and then, of course, the 318 crashes just north of Collegedale. Let me look at my notes real quick before we go any further.